And so our next presenter is Dr. Natalie Eddington. She comes to us from the College of Pharmacy at the University of Maryland in Baltimore. And she will sort of switch gears a little bit and tell us about what her institution, under her leadership, is doing in pioneering a master's degree for pharmacy students to prepare them for what's coming very soon in various pharmacies, so they know what to tell patients, they know how to facilitate patients' questions, and the rest I'll leave up to her to tell us. Natalie, please come up.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the Dean of Pharmacy, and you sound like my students. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, thank you. It is a pleasure to be here to talk about a consequential program that we have developed at the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. And I'd like to just make it clear that this program is not just for pharmacists. When you see some of our later slides, our inaugural class is very diverse in terms of their participation in healthcare, et cetera. So it is my pleasure to be here today to share our challenges in building up a medical cannabis program, some of the stops along the way, and where we are now. So this has really been a journey for us. We've learned a lot. We've had some interesting, difficult conversations, but we believe specifically that as the medical cannabis industry grows, as the number of patients increase, the number of providers increase, and the industry itself expands, that we need to have an educational program to help support that. So what I'll be talking about today is background on the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. I would not be a good dean if I didn't talk about my school, and I'm sure you're awaiting everything I have to say about it. Talk to you a bit about the history of medical cannabis in the state of Maryland, our first foray into medical cannabis with our Cannabis Commission within the state, the drivers of this evolving landscape of the medical cannabis industry, as well as development and launch of our program, a bit about media relationships, and then a short overview. So the mission of our school, the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy, is that we lead pharmacy education, scientific discovery, patient care, and community engagement in the state of Maryland and beyond. We are the fourth oldest school of pharmacy in the world. We were founded in 1841. We're number 9 according to U.S. News and World Report. We have 3 specific departments within the school. Our pharmaceutical sciences department, which are basic scientists that are involved in drug delivery, drug discovery. We also have our pharmaceutical health services research department. Those are our pharmacoeconomists and epidemiologists. And we have our pharmacy practice and science department, which are our clinicians. This is a short summary with data regarding the school, the number of academic programs that we have. We probably have more academic programs as a school of pharmacy than any of the schools of pharmacy around the country. 90 full-time faculty, 40,000 patients seen yearly by our faculty, 30 million in research dollars. So first I'd like to start with the history of medical cannabis in our state. So in 2012, the Maryland General Assembly enacted a state law that basically said and established the regulated medical cannabis program. So that was the first step, 2012. In 2013 and 2014, the Medical Cannabis Commission also stated that they wanted to see investigational use of cannabis for medical purposes at academic medical centers, Hopkins and the University of Maryland. And they also wanted training for healthcare providers and patients. And that was where we thought we'd have a role. In 2019, and that's this year, the Maryland General Assembly has approved of immunity for academic research. Unfortunately, today we're still not doing research at the university, even with a law from the state assembly, because of the challenges regarding doing research on a Schedule I plant and the concerns of losing federal funding. So a little bit about medical cannabis in the state of Maryland. As of 2019, we have almost 80,000 registered patients, 1,240 or so certifying providers, 71 dispensaries around the state. We also have 15 growers and 16 processors. In the first year that we established medical cannabis in the state, the first 12 months of sales, there was about $112 million in retail sales. So let me just first share with you our first foray into medical cannabis, and more so how you go through things in your career where you learn things that you didn't know and should have known. And this really reflects our entry into medical cannabis education. The University of Maryland School of Pharmacy's 2017 continuing education effort. So as I mentioned before, the General Assembly said that they would like to have an educational program that focused on a number of areas, including federal and state medical cannabis laws and regulations pertinent to agents' responsibilities, as well as standard operating procedures. So we have had an online platform for many years. We use that to facilitate our program, our PharmD program. And so we partnered with an external entity to develop content as mandated by the General Assembly. So the Baltimore Sun is our home paper. And you can see right off, they're starting in the wrong direction. This was their headline on the 7th of July in 1917. 1917. Anyway, this always brings back bad memories for me, so you'll know why. You'll find out. Anyway, so this was the headline, front page of the paper, pot vendors to get training, University of Maryland School of Pharmacy offering online course for marijuana workers. So this is fine. And then we talked about our partnership and how we would build out the program. And we did initially help with a number of the industry's workforce. 2 months later, classes for pot ended by the University of Maryland. Officials brought up legal concerns, pharmacy school says. Basically, this program had content focused on growing and cultivation. The Attorney General contacted our president. Our president contacted me. He told me, Natalie, talk to the Attorney General. They're talking about aiding and abetting. I said, oh, really? That's nice to know. So that was an easy decision for me, at least. And so we discontinued the program. But we learned a lot from that, and some lessons are easier than others. So because of that, that did not stop us from our perspective that medical cannabis is growing, no pun intended, but it's very important. But it's very important for us and schools of pharmacy, schools of medicine, schools of nursing, et cetera, to make sure that we have an educated workforce, as well as other different careers. So this is going to take you through the drivers that we used as part of our proposal to the Maryland Higher Education Commission, as well as the Board of Regents, for the approval of our cannabis proposal. So first of all, I think everybody is aware of the significant increase in the number of states that are either adult use or recreational use, adult use or medical cannabis. A total of 33 states now, the District of Columbia, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands have approved a comprehensive, publicly available medical cannabis program. Secondly, I think one of the areas that has really moved our legislators, our Board of Regents, et cetera, is the fact that in this 2017 report by the National Academies of Medicine, they reviewed 10,000 research papers, and they came up with 100 conclusions specifically about the health effects and the therapeutic effects of cannabis and various disease states. This has been very helpful in convincing legislators and others about the importance of having a program that can help support the education of our trainees. The other change that we see a significant growth is the revenue associated with the medical cannabis industry. So this figure presents the U.S. cannabis market projections between 2014 and 2025. And you can see the significant growth between 2025 and 2015. Market projections tell us that revenue will be $54 billion in 2025 just in the United States. And so based on these projections, we know that the cannabis industry will be and continues to be a job creator. So education in the cannabis workforce. So the other issue that we know, we see this growth of medical cannabis states, these projections about the revenue associated with projected revenue associated with medical cannabis. What we don't have now is, in general, traditional educational programs for healthcare providers or scientists or policy folks don't have specific instruction regarding the science, the therapeutic uses, and the policy of cannabis. Healthcare professionals report significant gaps on their knowledge of medical cannabis use. So over the past 2 years, there have been a number of surveys that have done in medical journals, nursing journals, as well as pharmacy journals about the level of confidence of students as well as graduates as it relates to medical cannabis. So the following table summarizes, this is a summary of a number of different surveys. And basically, when you ask physicians, nurse practitioners, or pharmacists, a check was that, yes, I have a level of confidence or knowledge, and X was a no. So if we look at dosing and development of treatment plans, not a level of confidence. Laws and regulations, not a level of confidence. Adverse effects and risks, characteristics of dosage form, pharmacology and pharmacokinetics of the plant, as well as the ability to counsel patients. So there is a significant gap, or there is a perceived significant gap from physicians, from pharmacists, and from nurse practitioners. Along with that, and along with the growth that we've talked about, there's been a significant growth in the number of patients around the country. There were approximately 60,000 cannabis providers in 2018, and this also shares with the number of patients. So in 2018, the state of Maryland, we had about 80,000 patients. In the Northeast region, we had about 358,000. And nationally, there are more than 2 million medical cannabis patients and about 60 or so physicians. And so we know that the number of patients are increasing. We know that the financial projections are increasing. We also know that there is data that specifically says that cannabis and the cannabis industry is a job creator. So in 2018, approximately 211,000 Americans worked in the industry. A recent report from the New Frontier Data projects that by 2020, the legal cannabis market will create more additional jobs, 250,000 additional jobs. And they clearly state that this is becoming a major job creator, not just in the medical cannabis states, but around the country. And they state that this is more than has been expected from manufacturing, utilities, or the government. So this is a listing of the number of careers and jobs. So as part of the proposal that we had to develop to submit to the Board of Regents and the Maryland Higher Education Commission, we have to provide specific information on workforce projections for the program. And so what we did was we looked at, we listed out jobs in the medical cannabis industry, so dispensaries, consultants, chemistries, pharmacy technicians, physicians, lawyers, of course, business and graphics and marketing. And so we listed that out. We had a time frame that was the latter part, the October of last year for this, and we also looked at jobs in the Northeast region. We also provided information, a bit more in-depth information on other jobs. This was done by Burning Glass, a platform that helps support the dissemination of information regarding jobs, job titles for certain positions. And this is a number of jobs that are associated with cannabis that have been filled in the last 2 to 6 years. And so the variety of jobs that we see in the cannabis industry is very broad. And so this was very important as we look to develop our program. So the justification that we use for this program included the number of states that are medical cannabis states or adult use states, the National Academy's report that I referred to, the cannabis market projections, the significant gaps in the understanding and education on medical cannabis, the number of patients, providers, and the industry workforce. And so based on this, this was submitted to those 2 bodies that I mentioned, and we received approval the first week of June of this year. Yes, June of this year. And our conversations with our state legislators, et cetera, has always been within this statement. As the number of states legalizing medical cannabis increases, so does the need for an educated workforce to respond to the demand for medical cannabis with an understanding and expertise regarding the science and therapeutic effects of this medicinal plant. So a little bit about the program overview. This is a master's program. It is a 2 years master's program. There are 10 courses with 30 credits. Each course is 8 weeks long. 2 courses are taken each semester. The courses are taken consecutively, rather concurrently. There are 6 required courses that I'll show you. There are 4 electives, and there are 4 symposiums fall and spring. Now, I didn't mention, but this program is totally online except for the symposiums. So for the symposiums, students come to the University of Maryland for a day-long symposium, and I'll tell you a bit about that as well. So the required courses are listed here. Intro to Medical Cannabis, History, Culture, and Policy. So this is their introduction to a number of different areas. We talk about the stigma associated with policy. We talk about the history in terms of the science as well as various laws. The second course is the Principles of Drug Action and Cannabinoid Pharmacology. This goes into the receptors, we talk about the pharmacokinetics, we talk about the metabolism, we also talk about the methods of metabolism, et cetera. The clinical effects of medical cannabis. We have 3 therapeutic courses, and each course talks about various disease states, as does the clinical effects of medical cannabis. We also have basic cannabinoid chemistry and drug delivery. So here, one of our major focuses now is going to be vaping, because this is a major way that many do use cannabis. And so we are working with the FDA through the work that we are doing on another FDA project to bring that as part of the discussion. Research design in medical cannabis. We will not have the plant on the campus. The students don't have access to the plant, at least at the School of Pharmacy, they don't. But we will have a research design in medical cannabis course and expert seminar series and case studies. The electives are listed here. Now, we just started up the program in June, and these are the electives that we have now. We're building more electives after the first cohort of students to see what are some other areas that we should be focusing on. So the elective courses are Advanced Cannabis Therapeutics 1 and 2, the Negative Physical, Psychiatric, and Social Effects of Cannabis, Advanced Cannabinoid Chemistry and Analytical Testing Methodology, Cannabis Genomics and Pharmacognosy. There will be no cultivation of that. Just want to make sure I always state that clearly. And state and federal cannabis laws and policy. So we look at the data that I shared with you in terms of career destinations, and we want our graduates to be prepared for careers in research, research and development, policy, and patient care. Through this course and through the symposiums that we have every year, the students have the opportunity to develop a professional network while they're at school. They have roundtable sessions and networks and our networking events. They learn knowledge gain in the program, and they can apply it to practice if that is their goal. And we discuss the professional roles and responsibilities with industry experts. The admission criteria summarized here. Number 1 is an interest in a career in the medical cannabis industry, a bachelor's degree or higher from an accredited college or university, preferred minimum GPA of 3.0, and overall quality of academic transcripts, and ability to travel to the universities at Shady Grove and Rockville once per semester. That is where we have our twice-a-year symposium. Recruitment. This is sort of the timeline and then the outcome. We receive approval from the Board of Regents and the Maryland Higher Education Commission in early June. We launched the marketing and media relations in the 12th of June. And we received more than 700 applicants received for the class of 150 students within that 6-week period. We spent a lot of time thinking about how do we attract students? How do we get students interested in a medical cannabis program? And so we spent a lot of time thinking about media relations, et cetera, and some of the things that we did. We ran digital ads with Google. We had a landing page where we could collect a lot of information from students, and we followed up with leads through email and texting, and this is some of the data that our marketing folks like to share. But once the program was started up and we received approval, we received a lot of interest from the media. And so these are some of the media contacts that we've had: U.S. News and World Report, Wall Street Journal, Baltimore Sun, High Times, Entrepreneur, ABC News, Drug Topics, Forbes, intermidair.com in the Netherlands, and Voice of America from Russia. So we had a diversity of interests. I was very happy to see this first media from the Baltimore Sun, our home paper, that basically used the word medical cannabis. So I'm very happy about the transition for that. We also, ABC News, a master's in marijuana schools, designing programs to meet the industry. The Wall Street Journal, careers in marijuana catch on at colleges. Forbes, U.S. universities offering cannabis-focused graduate programs. University of Maryland, U.S. News and World Report, U.S. News starts first medical marijuana degree. So this has been very helpful in bringing in a level of interest, and it's been instrumental in really helping us move our applicant numbers up. So a few questions that we get routinely I thought would be of interest to share. How is this degree different from others that are available? Well, it's the first master's level degree focused on medical cannabis in the country and in the world. There's not another medical cannabis master's, at least. There are courses that we know that focus on specific areas related to medical cannabis in a clinical area or maybe a science area, but this is a master's degree. What is the program like? Well, it is a 2-year online program with one per semester session at the universities of Shady Grove. The curriculum covers science, clinical care, policy, and regulatory areas. There are 4 required courses that I mentioned, and those are principles of drug action and cannabinoid pharmacology, cannabinoid chemistry and drug delivery, clinical use and effects of medical cannabis, that's the first clinical course, and an overview of the current state and federal laws. The symposia. Well, the symposia is something that we wanted to do to create community among our students, to bring students together once a semester. And so we wanted to have, for our first symposium, we wanted to have the orientation part. We wanted them to get to know their colleagues. This is the first time that they've met in person. We had roundtables with industry professionals. That's been very helpful. It's sort of the same practice that we use with our School of Pharmacy, bringing in either health systems or community pharmacies to share opportunities with the workforce. We're doing the same thing with these students. We had round tables where industry professionals sat down with students and talked about their journey to medical cannabis. Afternoon seminars from experts in the field, the leader of the Medical Cannabis Commission, a owner of medical cannabis in the state of Maryland, and a healthcare provider, a physician, provided this. A little bit about our inaugural classes summarized here. The range in age is from 22 to 72. There were 95 females, 46 males, 6 Asians, 28 blacks, 10 Hispanics, 76 white, and 11 multi-ethnic students. We had representation from nearly every state here in the US. We also had 2 students from Hong Kong and 2 students from Australia that actually came to the symposium. We had 50% of the students have backgrounds in science and medicine, a lot of physicians, a lot of nurse practitioners, and the rest of the students were from the cannabis industry, education, law, and policy, and advocacy, as well as communication. And this is my last slide, and this is at our Shady Grove campus. And these are 149 of the 150 students in our class. Not a bad looking group. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dean Eddington, you have provided us with a terrific model that I'm sure many institutions, hopefully here too, will consult with you in order to establish something very similar, sure, which clearly from the response you've already had is something that is needed across the country. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank
Really
you.
much appreciated.
Sure.
Any questions for Dr. Eddington?
Thank you so much for this presentation. There are a number of ethical issues that I perceive here at the moment, and one of them is do no harm. The other is life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. There's extensive literature in the study of human happiness, and Todd brought up a very interesting point that I caught on to, and that is the issue of reversion to an intrinsic neuronal behavior as a result of certain of the molecules associated of the derivatives of the cannabis plant. I have some degree of reservation because there are people looking at cannabis materials for recreation. And recreation that leads to death is defeating the idea of the dignity of life. I have considerable concern that we're pushing ahead with an economic force and without full reservation to the potential harm to individuals and groups within our society. Would you comment?
Yeah, so I think one thing that is very important to us at the School of Pharmacy is that we named the program Medical Cannabis for a reason. And so that's very important to us. In terms of the work that we're doing with this program, it's mainly education. You know, I was struck by the level and the amount of gaps that we've seen with healthcare providers. I have been struck by the lack of education in science programs on cannabis. So that's our focus. I believe that, so the issue for me is learning more about cannabis. The issue for me is that we need to continue to do research, but we need an educated research infrastructure as well. And so I don't know if I am answering your question. I don't think that we should step back from cannabis because of certain issues that you've mentioned. I think we need to learn more about it, we need to be able to do research, and we need to have an educated workforce in order to do that.
There, I think the interface with ongoing behavioral research such that before beginning the use of such products, the individual has a personality profile done and that there are measurable parameters of the efficacy of that particular agent versus other things which are variables that could be impacting their happiness or their expectations of the effect of the drug.
Hi, my name is Natalie Largent-Milnes. I just have a question on content. So there are a number of different strains of cannabis being sold throughout the U.S. We don't necessarily have a lot of information about which strains are good for which indications. How is that really captured in your program?
Well, that's one of the challenges that we do have, is making sure that we stay within the boundaries of our Attorney General in terms of looking at this. We're still building, that's a course for next year, January timeframe, and so we're still building that course. Okay. I can give you a better idea of the specifics and what we're trying to cover after we receive approval.
Okay, great, yeah. Thank you.
Any more questions for Dr. Eddington?
Morning, Natalie. My name
Morning.
is Aaron Wilkins, and I'm glad I'm here today. I had a couple concerns. My brother is actually a professional athlete currently, and he plays for a team you all probably would not want to know about because they're not doing so well. But however, my major concerns, I have a master's in sports, and I have a background first in marketing, but I have a master's in sports sports administration. And
Would you speak up just a little bit,
okay,
please?
thank you. Can you hear me now? Yeah. I have a background in a master's in sports and entertainment management. My main concerns is like from an educational outlook, what is your concerns on sports athletes using and abusing, whether it's opioids over other recreational or cannabis usage in that regards?
So for pain management, I think that there are challenges with opioids. We know that because of the crisis that we have here in this country that we don't see in other countries. So obviously that's a big concern. But athletes have to have pain treatment. I mean, they live with pain a great deal. I think there's work and there's evidence to support pain management by cannabis. So I would want to be, I hope I'm answering your question, I'd want to be open to using something that's not an opioid. I would like that to be more of the focus of pain management as opposed to using opioids as a means to treat pain. You know, there are a number of different reports that have come out talking about the NFL and the number of players that live with pain.
Yeah.
And that is a big challenge. It has to be something that we talk about a bit more, and there have to be other solutions that teams use as opposed to what they tend to use that's quick and it relieves pain, but also has the problem with addiction.
Yeah, and it does seem like they're actually enhancing more performance and recovery facilities and laboratories in other ways. I know Tom Brady actually has one himself in Boston, just quicker ways to rehabilitate and just be able to recover faster and whatnot for athletes so they can perform well on a week-to-week basis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ricardo Pareda. I'm an alumni from the University of Arizona. I'm also a medical cannabis patient, although I'm not registered with the state any longer. I'm a veteran also, received my care through the VA, or at least some of it, not the cannabis part. I think to answer your concern, sir, about the harms, we're already being harmed with what we're being prescribed already. And the gap in this knowledge base is because of our refusal to address these subjects in a professional, rational manner. And that does a lot of harm to people like me, to athletes, to other individuals who are curious about this as an alternative, a true alternative to the opiates, to the benzos, to a lot of the things that are already being consumed, abused, here on campus right now, here in this hospital right now. Right? We have alcohol that's served at every single game. They just expanded the liquor license. How many veterans, myself being one of them, who was self-medicating with alcohol? There are a lot of things that we need to fill in here with this educational gap, and going back to the ignorant rhetoric isn't going to assist us in finding the answers we need for the future. In my opinion, have you come across this? Because when you're emphasizing a lot, we're not studying the plant. The plant's not going to be in campus. There's a lot of things that are harmful in this campus right here that are being studied. There's a lot of things in the controlled environment research area that are being studied that are harmful. Why are we treating this plant like it's radioactive? Have there been any deaths associated with it? Have there been any diseases spread as a result of touching it or handling it? I worked with cannabis for 2 years. I didn't get anything negative as a result of my work with it. Why is there this inability of institutions outside of Ole Miss to conduct actual research? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question, and please know that if I was allowed to do research, I would be doing research. The challenge that we have is the fact that it's still Schedule 1, and that does have a perceived impact on federal funding for universities like University of Arizona, University of Maryland, Baltimore, Johns Hopkins. I have been very active in trying to move the university where I work to do research. My background is a researcher. I have a PhD. I'm a pharmacokineticist myself. And so there are all these questions that we need to answer. You know, one of the interesting facts is that when you talk to healthcare providers that are providers of cannabis, and when I was putting this program together, I always said, so what is it that we really need? What can we focus on? And the first thing that they would always say is we need a starting dose, right? And so there isn't any research out there, or enough research out there, and a diverse level of research to really help with being more specific with cannabis, the components, dosing, dosage forms. And so our goal with this program is to at least work on potential researchers, clinicians, et cetera, that when the switch is turned on and it goes from Schedule I to Schedule II, that we can start doing research and really finding out this, you know, the therapeutic uses in a more broader sense for this exquisite plant. And so I hear what you say. I totally agree with you. I'm as frustrated as you are. But there are laws that prevent us from doing the research that we could be doing.
Hi, I just have a quick question. Can you audit these classes?
I'm sorry?
Can you audit these classes?
I have not thought about auditing, but it's something we can consider.
Yeah, cool.
I'm happy I made you happy. Yes.
Hello, my name is Neil Champion. I just wanted to ask about your program. Do you have any requirements as far as writing or research for your students?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any requirements as far as writing or research for the students of your master's program?
Yeah, so we have a research program as one of the last courses, but we can't do any research, right? We can't do anything with the plant. But what we're trying to do is provide those students with some research questions, looking at literature, working with other researchers in the cannabis industry that are in their state to get that kind of experience. That's something that we look forward to be able to do research. You know, 150 students focused on one problem, I think they can answer a lot of questions. And so tapping into that energy and that enthusiasm and that expertise is something we look forward to.
Okay. A little more on that in the future. Do you have plans to require some sort of thesis so that there's a broader discussion available academically to other students in other fields?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your question.
Some sort of like a thesis requirement where...
Oh, is that what your question?
Yeah,
Thesis?
basically, like,
Yeah.
is there going to be a broadening of the academic
Yeah, we're going
discussion?
to, once we can actually do research, we will have either a research project or a thesis as part of this. We'll add that to the program.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hello, my name is Thomas Hunt. I'm a local marijuana educator here. I didn't go to the U of A, but I'm a Wildcat fan. My question is I'm also a veteran. Most of my health care is at the VA. When I bring up cannabis as my primary use for medication, which I think that the VA views as self-medicating because they didn't prescribe it. However, do we have something in your program, or are you familiar with a program that creates educators out of us that we can then market ourselves as educators to other entities like the government to teach them? I mean, the last time I had skin cancer, I went into the clinic and I had expressed the interest that I didn't want to do chemo and I didn't really want to go into surgery, and the chief doctor there said, "Oh, are you going to use a black salve?" And I'd already said that I was going to use cannabis as a topical for my skin cancer. So clearly, there's a huge gap between education with our medical directors, our physicians that are seeing us on a regular basis. Do you have something in your program that educates people as educators rather than just studying cannabis as a therapeutic nature?
So I think, so tell me if I'm not answering your question. I think your question is.
Well, like a
really-
CMU or a CME, is there something that
Oh, so you're
we-
talking about a certificate program?
Yeah, certificate
so,
programs.
So we don't have a certificate program yet. We're planning to create a certificate program for the University of Maryland. It has to go through those two entities that I mentioned, the Board of Regents and the Maryland Higher Education Commission. So our plan was to create certificates on two things. One would be the clinical care, and one would be the science and policy of it. So yes, and that process takes, I think, about a year and a half.
Very good, thank you.
Any more questions? If not, we're going to start the morning break a little early. Please be back here at 11 o'clock, so we'll be back on schedule.